Hello everyone, and welcome to part 3 of The Chosen One. This is turning out to be a very intense story, and I want to warn you before we start this one. It's very gruesome, and it's very dark. So if you're used to my fanfictions on Star Wars theory, then you know where we're about to head to, but I just want to warn the new viewers of this channel who don't know me from my Star Wars channel, or maybe aren't familiar with my style of fanfictions back in the old days, but we're going very heavy in this one. Probably my best episode yet, so I want you to sit back, relax, and let's jump right in. William walked back through the door and immediately told the king, "I don't want to do this. I want to go back home."
Stupid boy. Do you not see there will be no home to go back to? Everything you cherish and everyone you love will burn right before your eyes as he makes you watch, and then he will bend you to his will. He will break you with everything you hold to your heart.
The king roughly let go of William's shoulder as he ordered his servants to bring the basin of truth. Right away, 4 servants brought over this ancient-looking stone bowl that stood 6 feet tall. The designs were beautiful. The architecture was so elaborate and almost seemed to be over the top for such a simple stone basin. One final servant, dressed in all gold, walked out of the distance carrying a golden, thick liquid in a big, clear bottle. William assumed that it was glass, but with this place, he couldn't assume anything, really. As the stone basin was filled to the brim with golden liquid, the king grabbed William, lifted him in the air, and dunked his entire head into the basin. Expecting to feel wet, he felt dry. Expecting to hold his breath so water won't get in, he was breathing. What the heck was this? William thought as he fought against the king to get free, but it was no use. The man was a giant, after all, with ungodly power. "William!" He heard his mother and opened his eyes. The dream must be over, he thought, when he saw her standing before him, along with his father and 2 sisters and little brother, all on fire and burnt, unmoving as they turned to ash and blew away in the wind, which carried them along the fire-swept land of what looked like his neighborhood. Screams from all of the houses burned into his ears, just as they did before his eyes. He watched in the distance as demon dogs ran through the streets, ripping people apart, eating them, some just biting a chunk out of humans and leaving them there to scream and die as they burnt to death. William was transported to all corners of the world, men, women, and children, all suffering the same fate. Some worse, some just dead. Lucky for them. Ghoulish-looking, hunched goblins ran around with black knives, ending people at will. Torture, hatred, fear seethed from the world as William now watched from space as if floating like one of his superheroes that he used to read in his comic books. The world as bright as the sun as it swelled with flames. The tears flowed down his cheeks, even though the so-called water of this liquid, which really wasn't liquid at all, should have prevented him from feeling wet, should have prevented him from feeling any tears streaming down his face, but yet he felt dry. With all of his might, he shook his head and pushed himself away from the basin, but as much as he fought, the king kept him there with super strength. William screamed, Stop it, I don't want to see anymore!" When all of a sudden, Willie, that voice, it was Violet. She laughed, and he saw her run her hands through his hair. They were at the tree. This was the same place they shared their first kiss. And he carved their initials into the tree. VW. He looked to the sunset, sure that he had finally woken up, relieved. The sweet smell of summer rushing through his linen button-up shirt. Oh, God, what a horrible dream, he thought, as he felt the grass on his feet. "William," she said, as he cranked his neck to see her beautiful face, contorted, hanging from the tree, her lifeless body dangling, on fire, as she stared at him. A goblin moved behind him, and then William turned to stare. Erebor. He was here, turning his stick as he looked back at dead Violet, who was now whole and lifelike again, as she looked back at Erebor to attack him who was no longer there. Turning back, he saw her screaming for his help. Help me, William! Save me! As she burnt, he ran to her to try and put the flames out, but as he did, parts of her body broke off into ash and flew away into the wind. Eivor, standing behind him now. You belong to me now, boy. William couldn't take it anymore. He kicked and screamed through the gold liquid as it shattered into pieces and the king went flying backwards. The guards ran at William full force as the king screamed, "No!" But it was too late. They tried to strike the boy, but were stricken in place, unable to move, their spears turning into water, dribbling down their hands as their clothes began to catch fire. One fell through the floor and the other became mad as he ran into a wall repeatedly.
Enough,
said the king, throwing a blunt object from his glove at William, knocking him out. As the king and his advisor stood over William, he began to come to, in and out of consciousness.
Do you believe now?
Said the king. William moved his head around, exhausted.
These are your first steps. Rest. Eat. We begin again when you wake.
William woke up in a little cot and barely a pillow, if you could really call it that, his head pounding and his eyes burned like a hangover with a vengeance. Where am I? He thought. So much for royalty. Chosen one, what kind of a chosen one gets a bed like this? As the king's servants entered, William realized it wasn't a dream. He needed to stop doing that, and to realize this place was happening, whether he wanted to or not. They put some of the most delicious and foreign-looking and smelling food William had ever seen as they motioned for him to sit at the table. The king has ordered for you to eat as much as you can. Training starts tonight. Tonight? William said, but isn't it morning? The servants all submissive and afraid.
Sir, it has been 4 revolutions of your sleep.
William suddenly realized why he was starving and so thirsty. His head pounded for liquid. He rushed to the table and ate ravenously. He didn't even know what he was eating, but it was the most delicious thing that he had ever tasted. Orange-colored meats, purple vegetables, or what looked to be something from the ground at least, multicolored drinks of all kinds, everything new to his taste buds. And the desserts! He didn't even know sugar could taste like this. Or was it sugar? After eating the entire table, William sat with an extended stomach and ready to sleep for another 4 nights, this time willingly. As he sat, he looked to the dancing green fire that warmed his room. Odd, he thought. He had never seen green fire except for in the palace. One hand on his obsidian crystalline cup, taking another gulp of whatever liquid this was. He looked at the clothes hung on the back end of the door, facing him. He walked over and grabbed them, his stomach hanging low, full of what seemed like all of the food on this planet? Island? William questioned. Donning the clothing, he looked down and felt like an idiot. Yes, but a royal chosen one idiot, he thought and laughed to himself. Green pants, green shirt, made of a material he had never felt before. It felt so thick between his fingers, yet once he wore it, felt like he wasn't wearing clothing at all. Truly bizarre, he thought. The patterns were merely just the way that they were threaded, although they seemed to be one piece, as if some sort of alien metallic metal woven into some actual fabric. Patterns and waves all alike with all the same color tone, just different shades. It was as if this was not from thread, but one giant piece of something that really seemed impenetrable. William grabbed the sharp knife from the table and tried cutting the cloth. Impossible. The knife bent in pursuit of going through the impregnable garment. Magic, he whispered. He thought, he assumed. William was beginning to believe. But believe what? Suddenly, his head struck with sharp pain, dropping him to one knee as he knelt and held his head in one hand. Searing pain scorching his cranium like electrical currents passing through the contents of his skull, remembering slowly what had happened before he passed out. And it felt like the food was about to come all out of his stomach and back onto the table, which he made his way to, sitting back into the chair. The visions he saw of his parents, his family, of Violet. He stood to his feet, his hand on his heart. But no, that wasn't all he remembered. He knew that there was more, but he could not search for it. He could not remember. The door slammed open as the king's advisor entered.
Our lord awaits. Come.
William could tell this guy hated him, but hey, whatever. He entered the courtyard with the advisor. It looked like an arena, the king standing in the middle, in a similar tunic, just gold and, although, much more illustrious, of course.
Have you fed?
Said the king with a smile on his face. William nodded. What happened? The king smirked.
You proved your prophecy.
What? The king silenced the boy.
Now, are you ready to rid this evil from our world and yours and the rest of the galaxies?
Galaxies? William thought.
Yes,
he said sternly. I am, said William as he positioned himself into a fierce karate stance. He was the karate champ back in his hometown, the Valley. Undefeated. The king chuckled.
What is that?
I'm getting ready for training. Is that not what you wanted? The king laughed from his muscular belly as he held it with one hand, the other on his spear.
You earthlings are all the same. Our training has nothing to do with the mind, boy, but rather with the soul, the heart, your energy within.
William immediately got out of his karate stance and felt embarrassed, as he should. The king twisted his spear with his index finger and thumb ever so slightly, moving towards William. The entire arena changed to the street back home in his neighborhood. Hey, why are we here? What are you doing?
Focus. Do you see your house behind you?
William turned and nodded.
Inside, you will find your parents. I want you to imagine them happy, full of hope. You've returned home, and they embrace you.
William felt the love in his heart. As he was transported inside his home, the doorbell rang. It was Violet, as beautiful and sweet as ever, holding a plate of freshly baked peanut butter chocolate chip cookies for him. Oh man, he could smell them. Oh, thank God, he thought, hugging her, embracing her, giving her a kiss on the lips. It was really all a dream. What was a dream, William? You're acting funny. William, bring Violet in and let's start dinner. As they began to eat, he looked over to Violet. She was glancing at him. She knew what he was thinking, and she missed him too. As they all made small talk and ended with a nice big dessert, William's favorite, a nice New York cheesecake. His mother asked, "So, when are you two getting married finally?" "Mom, stop!" Violet giggled. Personally, she couldn't wait for William to ask the question. They had been dating for 4 years already, and she knew that he was the one, and he felt the same. William continued to eat his cake, happy as can be, already forgetting about his horrible dream and nightmare. He was back home and with his family, when all of a sudden he tasted something very bitter in his mouth. "Ah, Mom, did you put one of those fake cherries in here again?" As he pried the cherry out of his mouth, he said, "Yuck!" But nobody responded. Looking up, he saw his entire family burnt, smoldering on fire, screaming for help. He pushed himself away from the table. No, not again! The entire house went up in flames as everyone burnt inside, screaming for him. He tried to save them, but all of a sudden he was in the middle of the street. He now was seeing what he saw earlier in the basin. He remembered it all. The king ordered his guards to attack William. As he kept his eyes closed, one guard froze in place once again, but this time actually froze, with icicles hanging off of his robes. Literally froze, as he exploded into a million different pieces, while the other guard tried to stab William with his spike, going right through William. Literally, right through his body as if he were a ghost. William moved his hand upwards, sending the guard thousands of feet into the air and exploding him into a million different pieces. The third guard swung chains of fire daggers at William, like one of the characters from one of his favorite fighting games. This guard was well equipped and well trained. He wrapped the chains of fire around William's neck, successfully pulling William to the ground. As he was kicked in the ribs by the fourth and final guard, who upon the fifth kick to William's ribs, broke his foot on William's stomach. The guard screamed in pain, the fire chains burning into William's neck as he screamed, tightening like a noose. William raised one hand as if begging for mercy, when, in actuality, he was summoning some black magic orb into his palm, as lines of every color imaginable swirled within it. Sucking in all the light of the room, the guard with the broken foot hobbled and grabbed his palm to close it, as his skin began to become encrusted with black veins, pulsating into his eyes, fading him into a gray vessel stricken with a look of terror on his face, while William put both hands onto the floor and sent a pulse through it that even left the king staggering to find his balance. As the final guard with the fire chains fell off of his feet, William stood, his eyes still shut, raising his hands and telekinetically piercing the guard with the same chains, stringing him up to a nearby tree, the same one that he used to play at as a kid on his block. Now, in William's mind, he was still back home, but in reality, he was in the arena with the king. William, full of rage, moved to the king, who turned his stick the opposite way, bringing William back out of the reality he thought he was just in, his eyes still closed, doing all of this with just his mind, with feeling, with seeing. Not seeing through the physical sense, but seeing through his soul, through his energy, and the energy of all those around him. Seeing like he had never seen before. Barely breathing at all, calm as could be, he grabbed the king's stick, to which the king's eyes widened with fear as he lifted it and slammed the end to the ground, spinning William and landing him to his bottom on the floor.
Stay with me, boy. Fight the emotions. Control them. You must not lose control so easily. You will use that to his advantage, and he will set you free upon every world. Only I will not be there to wake you.
Smacking William on the neck, waking him up, William could barely breathe. Barely speak, barely see as he crawled on the floor, panting, as if through broken ribs he looked around. He observed the droids that were actually the guards, all their nuts and bolts, springs, and oil spilt on the floor. These machines looked and felt just like superhumans. Ordering his servants to clean up the mess and build more training droids, the king grabbed William by the collar and lifted him, only to drop him a second later, hoping that he would have landed on his feet, but he did not. Said the king. William crawled on the floor, whispering for help, the exhaustion getting to him.
Erebor will not grant you such mercy, boy. You must adapt now, or your nightmares will become reality.
William closed his eyes, turning on his back and passing out, falling into a dream, hopefully a good one, this time. As the king's advisor came, he said,
My lord, he is powerful of the mind, but weak of the will. His body is too human. He still does not believe what yet is capable of him.
The king observed the boy, sleeping soundly, opening his mouth as he replied,
The boy is powerful. In the wrong hands, we will all be doomed.
Is there hope?
Said the king's advisor.
That is up to him. The boy is strong, yes, but his tenacity, he still does not believe. Typical humans. Send him to his quarters until he wakes. I will summon the spirits of the elders for guidance.
My lord.
The servant was shocked but knew his place. He bowed and William was sent to his quarters as the king ordered. The king turned on his heel and moved to the shadowlands of his world, throwing pouches of chrome sand into the pit of Elsmirium, chanting the ancients to waken. He spoke of the old language as 9 red spirits appeared, each one grumpier looking than the next.
You summoned us, King Joris. What do you need?
I summon the elders for guidance. The boy, he has powers I have never seen before, more than the last. But he is untrained, entitled, unbalanced, untamed.
Set him free. He will destroy us,
said one of the spirits. They all spoke at random.
train the boy, learn from your past.
I fear I will
Fail him
said the spirit at the end.
like you did
The king dropped to his knees, head down.
guide me. Elders, guide me.
The ghosts floated and fell silent as they joined into one singular being, youthful, powerful, landing to the ground gracefully, resting his hand on the king's bowed head. Stand, king. The time has come, the elder said. Do not fear your failures of the past. Learn from them. Let them strengthen tomorrow's resolve. Go unto the night fearless, for if you fail, you know you did so with true hearts. The king bowed. Push the boy. Do not fear his power, for we are with you, and him, and our people. In time he will prove to you his tenacity. But it is not something you can summon through us. The voyage is his and yours alone. You must be willing. You cannot make him. Fix the present and tomorrow will arrive with fear. Fix today and tomorrow will arrive with clear skies. Do all you can, and if no more can be done, rest your soul for nothing more. Rest your soul knowing you did all you could, our son.
Yes, Elder.
Now go, fearless. Make your ancestors proud. You are King Joris, son of Nixmore and House of Prathista. We are with you. In spirit, mind, soul, and the ether. The spirit divided into 9 again, and all receded into the pit of Elsmirium, their red glow fading out like a dying ember. The king looked to the night sky, the colorful stars riddling the darkness. Ever since he was a little boy, thousands of years ago, he would always look at one star in particular, an orb that had all the colors, oddly enough just like the magical orb that William had conjured without him knowing it. Of all the stars that he had traveled to, the king had never made it to that one.
Perhaps one day,
He whispered to himself.
but not yet.
The moons warming his face as the gentle breeze swam through his robes. The night was calm, collected. He closed his eyes, and he knew he could train the boy. It was just up to the boy to want to be trained, to want to succeed, to want to believe. The king remembered his training when he was a boy. He remembered his father. He smiled and looked up at the stars, as if trying to find him, opening his mouth to speak to him. When the sirens rang,
What?
he said,
How could this be? The boy was not ready. Why are they here?
As he looked to the sky, he saw the ships of the ancient Yattol entering the atmosphere from above.
No, 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 no!
Erevor's ship led the battalion of ships, racing towards the island. They were here for the boy. The king could feel it. He knew it. He jumped into the ocean quickly and summoned Girdosa, the largest creature of the waters, to race him back to the palace as the bells tolled in the darkness. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the conclusion here. There's a lot to unpack, there's a lot to uncover, and I hope you are very excited for the next installment. The story is nearing its end, and if you feel like it's rushed, well, these are short stories, but I would love to turn this one into a full novel at some point. and maybe we'll even get a prequel to the king's life. If you enjoyed this video or this podcast episode, please leave a like on the video on YouTube or rate it on Spotify and iTunes. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all in the next episode here on Theories Tales. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to always believe.